As a custodian at the hospital, I wanted to take a closer look at a drawer that remained open during a cleaning check in the morgue. When I leaned into the drawer, a hand from behind pushed me in and the lid closed over me. I could hear eerie sounds from outside. The hospital was old, built in the 1960s and showing its age despite numerous renovations. The basement level where the morgue was located hadn't been updated in decades. Night shift suited me. Fewer people meant fewer messes, and I could work at my own pace. The morgue was just another stop on my nightly rounds, though I'll admit it always gave me a chill. There's something fundamentally unsettling about a room designed to house the dead. That night started like any other. I'd worked my way through the upper floors and was making my final rounds in the basement. The morgue was my last stop before clocking out at 6 a.m. I noticed the problem immediately upon entering. One of the body storage drawers was partially open, about 6 inches extended from the wall. This wasn't entirely unusual. Sometimes the locking mechanisms failed on the older units. Hospital protocol required reporting any malfunctions, so I went for a closer look to check the drawer number. As I leaned in to examine the digital display, something hit me from behind. Hard. A forceful shove between my shoulder blades sent me sprawling forward. Before I could react, the drawer slid inward with me inside, and the heavy metal door slammed shut. Darkness, complete and absolute. I shouted and pushed against the door, but it wouldn't budge. These units were designed to seal tightly to prevent decomposition. From the inside, there was no handle, no release mechanism. The space was horrifyingly confined. I could barely lift my head more than an inch before hitting the metal ceiling. My shoulders touched the sides and I couldn't fully extend my legs. It was like being buried alive in a metal coffin. Panic clawed at my throat. I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but the morgue was soundproofed and located in the least trafficked area of the hospital. At this hour, it was unlikely anyone would pass by until the morning staff arrived, which was hours away. My phone was in my back pocket, but I couldn't maneuver enough to reach it in the confined space. Even if I could, there was no signal in the basement, especially not inside a metal drawer. I tried to control my breathing. The air in the drawer was limited, and hyperventilating would only deplete my oxygen faster. I forced myself to take slow, deep breaths as I considered my options. That's when I heard it. A sound from outside the drawer. A soft scraping, followed by a metallic click. Then another, and another. Someone was out there. Relief flooded through me. "Hey, I'm in here! Drawer 14, help me!" I shouted, pounding on the metal door again. The sound stopped. For a moment, there was silence, then a new sound, footsteps approaching my drawer. Slow, deliberate footsteps that didn't sound like the rubber-soled shoes worn by hospital staff. A shadow passed over the small viewing window in the door, momentarily blocking the dim emergency lighting from outside. I couldn't see clearly through the frosted glass, but someone was definitely there. "Hello? Can you hear me? I'm trapped in here." No response. The shadow remained for several seconds, then moved away. The metallic clicking sounds resumed. It took me a moment to realize what I was hearing. The other storage drawers were being opened one by one. Cold fear replaced my initial relief. Whoever was out there wasn't a fellow employee coming to my rescue. Who would be checking body drawers at 3 a.m.? I fell silent, listening intently. The pattern continued. A drawer would slide open, pause, then close. Methodical, purposeful, moving closer to my location. The temperature in the drawer was dropping rapidly. These units were refrigerated, kept just above freezing to preserve bodies. I was already shivering my thin custodial uniform, providing little protection against the cold. As the drawer checks continued, I noticed something odd. Each time a drawer opened, there was a pause, then a wet, dragging sound before it closed again. Something was being removed from each drawer. This made no sense. The morgue had only 2 occupants tonight, according to the whiteboard I'd seen upon entering, yet the sound suggested every drawer was being opened. "Who's there?" I called out again, unable to contain myself. "What do you want?" The movements outside stopped abruptly. Complete silence followed for several long seconds. Then the footsteps returned, coming directly toward my drawer. The shadow appeared again at the viewing window, larger this time, as if whoever was out there had moved closer to peer inside. I couldn't make out features through the frosted glass, just a dark silhouette. Then a voice, raspy and dry like sandpaper on stone. "You're not ready yet." The words sent ice through my veins. Not ready? Not ready for what? "Please," I begged. "Let me out. I can't breathe in here." "Patience," the voice whispered. "Your drawer will be last." The shadow moved away, and the systematic opening of drawers continued. My situation was growing dire. The cold was becoming unbearable, my extremities numbing. Each breath formed a cloud in front of my face. Worse, the air was growing stale. These units weren't designed to sustain the living. I needed to try something else. The viewing window was small, but the glass might be breakable. With no room to maneuver, I turned my head sideways and used my forehead to tap against it. The glass was surprisingly solid. After several attempts, I managed to crack it slightly. Encouraged, I continued striking it until a small piece broke free. Fresh air seeped in, reviving me slightly. The hole wasn't large enough to call for help effectively, but it prevented immediate suffocation. Through the opening, I could now hear more clearly. The wet, dragging sound was followed by something heavy being placed on what must have been the central autopsy table. This happened after each drawer was opened. I shifted, trying to see through the broken window. My view was limited, but I caught glimpses of movement. A tall figure moving between the drawers and the central table. Its proportions seemed wrong somehow, too elongated, too fluid in motion. As it passed closer to my drawer, I finally saw it clearly through the small opening. What I witnessed defied explanation. The figure resembled a person in medical scrubs, but its limbs were disproportionately long, hands extending almost to its knees. Its skin had a grayish pallor with a slick sheen like wet clay. Most disturbing was its face, features that seemed unfinished with hollow indentations where eyes should be and a mouth that opened far wider than humanly possible. It wasn't alone. On the autopsy table, I could see what it had been collecting. Bodies. Not just 2, but many more than should have been present in the morgue. They were arranged in a circular pattern, limbs intertwined. Some looked fresh, others in advanced decomposition despite the refrigeration. The thing in scrubs worked methodically, connecting the bodies, somehow joining them together like macabre puzzle pieces. As it worked, it hummed a tuneless melody. I must have made a sound because it suddenly stopped and turned toward my drawer. Through my small viewport, our eyes met, or rather my eyes met the empty sockets where eyes should have been. It tilted its head, studying me. "Your fear spoils the meat," it said matter-of-factly. "Calm yourself. Your contribution will be honored." It turned back to its work, but I noticed it now moved with greater urgency, as if racing against time. Dawn couldn't be far off. I was running out of options. The hole in the glass was too small for effective shouting. My strength was fading from cold and oxygen deprivation. Soon I would lose consciousness. That's when I remembered my lighter. I didn't smoke, but carried a cheap plastic lighter to melt frayed carpet edges during repairs. It was in my front pocket, accessible even in the confined space. The morgue had sprinklers. If I could create enough smoke. I pulled the lighter out with numb fingers and flicked it. In the confined space, the small flame seemed blindingly bright. I held it against my uniform sleeve, watching as the fabric began to smolder. The smell of burning polyester filled the drawer, acrid and toxic. I coughed painfully but continued. Smoke began seeping through the broken window. Outside, the creature noticed. It approached my drawer, peering in with those empty eye sockets. "No, no, no," it hissed. "Not yet, not like this." The smoke thickened. A moment later, alarms blared and water began spraying from the ceiling sprinklers. Emergency lights flashed, painting the morgue in pulses of red through my viewport. The creature shrieked a sound like metal tearing. It moved frantically around the room, trying to protect its grotesque creation on the table, but it was too late. The damage was done. Moments later, I heard new sounds. Doors opening, shouts of security, and medical personnel responding to the alarm. The creature gave one final wail, then fled my limited field of vision. My drawer slid open suddenly. A security guard stood there, eyes wide with shock at finding me inside. "Jesus Christ," he gasped, helping me out. "How did you get in there?" I tried to explain about the creature, the bodies on the table, but when I looked, the autopsy table was empty. The other drawers were closed, showing no signs of disturbance. Cursing as I thought I'd missed the last subway train by seconds late at night, I was relieved to see the lights of a new train approaching from the distance. The problem was, as soon as I got off the train and turned around, it had vanished, and there was no one in this deserted station. At least not yet. I never should have stayed at the office so late, but I'd been chasing that promotion for months. So there I was at 11:45 p.m., rushing down the steps to the Franklin Street subway station, knowing the last train was scheduled at midnight. I burst onto the platform just in time to see the taillights of the train disappearing into the tunnel. "Damn it!" I shouted the word, echoing through the empty station. I checked the schedule board. That was definitely the last downtown train. I pulled out my phone to call a rideshare, but had no signal underground. I'd have to go back up to street level, where at this hour in this neighborhood I'd be lucky to find a cab. That's when I heard it, the distinctive rumble of an approaching train. I looked up confused. The arrival board didn't show any more trains tonight. Maybe they'd added a late train? The transit authority had been testing extended hours on some lines. Whatever the reason, I wasn't going to question my luck. The train that pulled into the station was different from the usual models, older looking with a burnished silver exterior and windows that seemed smaller somehow. The destination marquee was dark, so I couldn't see where it was heading. But at this point, I just needed to get to any station with better transit options. The doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, the car was empty and dimly lit. I hesitated for just a moment, then stepped aboard. The doors closed immediately behind me. The train started moving, picking up speed quickly. I took a seat, noticing the unfamiliar upholstery pattern, a faded geometric design I'd never seen on city trains. Even the advertisements looked odd, showing products I didn't recognize with vintage-style graphics. We passed through several stations without stopping. Through the windows, I could see the regular platforms with their familiar layouts, but this train wasn't slowing down. After about 15 minutes longer than my usual commute, the train began to decelerate. I looked out the window, expecting to see one of the major hub stations, but instead saw an unfamiliar platform. The station sign read, "Carlisle Station." I frowned. I'd lived in the city for 12 years and used the subway system regularly, but I'd never heard of Carlisle Station. The train stopped and the doors opened. An automated voice announced, "Carlisle Station, end of the line." I remained seated, confused. This couldn't be right. I pulled out my phone to check the subway map, but still had no signal. "End of the line," the voice repeated. "All passengers must exit." Reluctantly, I stood and stepped onto the platform. The moment my foot touched the ground, the doors slid closed behind me. I turned to see the train pull away, accelerating rapidly back into the tunnel, leaving me alone on an unfamiliar platform. The station was unlike any I'd seen in the city system. The architecture appeared much older, with ornate tile work and brass fixtures that had developed a greenish patina. The lighting came from what looked like gas lamps, giving everything a soft yellow glow. Most disconcerting was the silence. City subway stations are never completely quiet. There's always the distant rumble of trains, the hum of electricity, the drip of water. But this place was tomb quiet, as if insulated from the world above and below. I approached the station map on the wall, hoping to orient myself. The map showed subway lines I didn't recognize in configurations that made no sense. Carlisle Station was marked with a red circle, but many of the connecting stations had names I'd never heard of. The familiar city grid was distorted, as if drawn by someone who had only a passing familiarity with the actual layout. "Hello?" I called out. "Is anyone here?" My voice echoed through the station, but no response came. I needed to get out. I looked for exit signs and spotted a stairwell at the far end of the platform. I hurried toward it, my footsteps loud against the tiled floor. The stairs led up to a mezzanine level with turnstiles, but the gates beyond them were closed and chained. No exit there. I returned to the platform looking for another way out. There had to be emergency exits, maintenance tunnels, something. On the opposite end, I found another staircase, this one descending rather than ascending. With no other options, I started down the stairs. They spiraled deeper than seemed reasonable for a subway station. The air grew colder with each step, and I noticed a strange smell, musty and organic like wet earth. At the bottom of the stairs was a long tunnel dimly lit by widely spaced bulbs. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming small puddles on the concrete floor. I hesitated but pressed on. The tunnel had to lead somewhere. After walking for what felt like at least half a mile, I came to a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. None was marked and all looked identical. I chose the middle path and continued. The tunnel began to change subtle at first, then more noticeably. The concrete walls gave way to older brick construction. The modern light fixtures were replaced by what looked like old iron sconces, though they still provided electric light. The floor transitioned from concrete to cobblestones. I began to wonder if I was in some kind of heritage section of the subway system, perhaps a preserved portion of the original tunnels. But why would it be connected to an active station with no markings or barriers? The tunnel eventually opened into a large circular chamber with a domed ceiling. The walls were lined with alcoves, each containing what looked like an old subway bench. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal with a bronze plaque. I approached the pedestal, curious despite my growing unease. The plaque was tarnished and difficult to read in the dim light, but I could make out a date, 1932, and what appeared to be a list of names, dozens of them. Below the names was an inscription, "In memory of those lost in the Carlisle Station incident. May they find their way home." A chill ran through me. What incident? I'd never heard of any disaster at a station called Carlisle. As I contemplated this, I became aware of a sound echoing through the chamber. Footsteps approaching from one of the tunnels. Relief flooded through me. Another person meant potential help. "Hello?" I called out. "I'm lost. Can you help me?" The footsteps stopped, then resumed slower, more deliberate. From one of the tunnels, a figure emerged. In the dim light, I could only make out a silhouette, tall and thin, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned conductor's uniform. As it moved closer into the light, I could see its face, or rather the lack of one. Where features should have been was only smooth skin with slight indentations where eyes and mouth would be. I backed away as it approached. It stopped at the pedestal, running a gloved hand over the plaque in what seemed like a gesture of reverence. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice shaking. "What is this place?" The figure turned toward me, tilting its head as if considering the question. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a whisper that bypassed my ears and went straight to my mind. "This is the waiting room," it said, "for those who missed their connection." I don't understand. Carlisle Station was built over a junction point, a place where the barriers between are thin. In 1932, a train crossed through carrying 57 passengers. They never reached their destination in this world. I glanced at the plaque with its list of names, feeling sick. And now? Now the train runs only when someone needs to cross, someone between destinations. More footsteps sounded from the tunnels. More figures emerged, all in various styles of clothing from different eras, all with the same featureless faces. They formed a circle around the chamber, sitting in the alcoves as if waiting. "I just want to go home," I said. The conductor figure nodded. "Everyone does, but home is relative. These travelers have been waiting for their connection for a long time. Some since 1932, some more recent. I don't belong here. I took the wrong train." "There are no wrong trains, only wrong destinations. The train Kate brought you here because you were between places, not just physically." It was right. My life had been in limbo for months, hating my job but afraid to leave, chasing a promotion I didn't even want, relationship falling apart, apartment feeling less like home each day. "The next train will arrive soon," the figure continued. "You may board it if you wish, but consider your destination carefully. Trains from Carlisle Station only travel in one direction." In the distance, I heard the rumble of an approaching train. The figures in the alcoves stirred, looking toward one of the tunnels where a light was growing brighter. I had a choice to make. Board the train to who knows where or find another way out of Carlisle Station. Neither option seemed promising. The train sound grew louder, the light brighter. The faceless figures stood moving toward the tunnel in unison. I made my decision. I ran back the way I came, ignoring the whispering voices that followed me. The tunnels twisted and turned in ways they hadn't before, but I kept running. Eventually, I found stairs leading up and took them two at a time. I emerged onto a subway platform different from Carlisle Station, but still unfamiliar. In the distance, I could hear another train approaching, a regular city train. When it arrived, I boarded immediately, not caring where it was headed. Anywhere was better than the waiting room beneath Carlisle Station. The next morning, I searched for information about Carlisle Station. I found only a small newspaper clipping from 1932 mentioning a planned station that was never completed due to structural concerns after a tunnel collapse killed several workers. I entered the mall's staff area to search for my valuable item lost during Black Friday shopping. When I found myself locked in an unused storage room, I discovered that at night, the mall serves different type of customer as well. I noticed it was missing after fighting my way through the crowd at the Midnight Madness sale. Panic set in immediately. That bracelet was irreplaceable, worth more in sentimental value than its considerable monetary value. I retraced my steps, searching every inch of floor, checking with security and lost and found. Nothing. As the mall's closing time approached, I grew desperate. The security guard had mentioned items sometimes got kicked under displays or into staff-only areas during the shopping frenzy. That's when I spotted it, a service door left slightly ajar behind a temporary Christmas display. A glimpse of something blue and glittering lay just beyond the threshold. My bracelet. Without thinking, I slipped through the door into a plain service corridor. The bracelet wasn't immediately visible, but I was certain I'd seen it. I moved further down the corridor, checking the floor carefully. The service area was a maze of identical hallways with doors marked storage, electrical, and maintenance. I turned a corner and saw a blue glint disappear under a door marked Archive Storage 7B. I hurried to the door and turned the handle. It opened easily. Inside was a large room filled with old retail displays, mannequins, and boxes of outdated promotional materials. Dusty holiday decorations from years past were stacked in one corner. In the center was an old security desk with several monitors still humming with power. I spotted my bracelet on the floor near the desk and rushed to retrieve it. As I bent to pick it up, the door behind me clicked shut. I whirled around, but too late. The automatic lock had engaged. I tried the handle, locked. I pounded on the door, calling for help, but the thick metal muffled my cries. The mall would be closing soon if it hadn't already. Would anyone even hear me? My phone showed no signal in the windowless room. I was trapped at least until morning when staff would return. Annoying, but not life-threatening. I'd have some explaining to do, but at least I had my bracelet back. I slipped it on, examining the room more carefully. The security desk drew my attention. The monitors were active, showing different areas of the mall. Most displayed empty corridors and darkened stores. The mall had indeed closed. One screen, however, showed the main food court where cleaning staff were finishing up their work. I watched, hoping to catch someone's attention somehow. But as I observed the monitor, I noticed something odd. The timestamp in the corner read 11:42 p.m., but the digital clock on the desk read 11:30 p.m. The feed was delayed. Curious, I checked the other monitors. Each showed different areas of the mall at slightly different times. Some were current, some delayed by minutes or hours. Then I noticed a monitor showing the main entrance. The timestamp read 12:01 a.m., 12 minutes in the future. In the image, the mall's main doors were opening and figures were entering. Lots of figures, but the mall closed at 11:30 p.m. I watched fascinated as the shadowy shapes moved through the entrance. Something about their movement seemed off, jerky and too fluid at the same time. And they weren't turning on lights. They navigated the darkness with ease. A chill ran down my spine. Who were these people and why were they entering a closed mall? Security would stop them surely. But on the screens showing security stations, the booths were empty. The desk had a control panel with buttons corresponding to different cameras. I found one labeled Main Corridor Night Vision and pressed it. One of the screens changed, showing a green-tinted view of the main walkway. The figures were moving through it now. With night vision, I could see them more clearly, though I almost wished I couldn't. They looked human-shaped, but wrong somehow. Some were unnaturally tall, with limbs too long and jointed in odd places. Others moved in a hunched, scuttling motion. Their faces, what I could see of them, appeared featureless or distorted. As I watched in horror, they began to disperse throughout the mall. Some entered dark stores, others gathered in the food court. A group headed toward the service corridors, the same ones I had navigated. I backed away from the monitors, panic rising. These weren't people. I didn't know what they were, but they weren't shoppers or staff, and they were coming closer. Looking around frantically, I spotted another door at the back of the storage room. Maybe a way out? I hurried to it, finding it unlocked. It opened to reveal a smaller room lined with filing cabinets. No exit. But the room had something else, a logbook on a small desk. Its cover read, Night Operations, Westbrook Exchange. I opened it, hands shaking. Inside were records dating back to the mall's opening in 1982. Each entry documented the exchange, apparently a regular event when the mall closed to the public. The entities I'd seen on the monitors were referred to as clients and patrons. The logbook detailed transactions between our world and somewhere else. The mall had been specifically built as a meeting place, a neutral ground for commerce between dimensions. During the day, it served humans. At night, it served something else. The most disturbing entries concerned overflow, instances when humans remained in the mall during exchange hours. The outcomes were never good. Some became merchandise. Others were listed as consumed or collected. A few were marked recruited or converted. The sound of a key in the outer door's lock froze my blood. They were coming. I looked around desperately for a hiding place. The filing cabinets were too small, the desk too exposed. In the corner was a large wooden wardrobe, probably once used for storing retail uniforms. I squeezed inside, pulling the door nearly shut, but leaving a crack to see through. The storage room door opened. Two figures entered. One appeared almost human, a tall man in a security uniform, though his movements were too smooth, his smile too wide. The other made no pretense at humanity. A towering skeletal figure with skin like wet paper and too many joints in its limbs. "The preparations are complete," the guard thing said. "The exchange begins in 10 minutes. The taller entity made a sound like rustling leaves. "Our patrons are eager. The holiday feeding frenzy among the humans has created opportunities. We have 13 specialty items on offer tonight, including several antiquities from the human side." My hand went instinctively to my bracelet. Was that what this was about? Had my grandmother's bracelet been part of this exchange before? The entities moved to the security desk, reviewing the monitors. The guard thing tapped one screen. "We have a visitor. Human biosigns detected in the facility." My heart nearly stopped. The taller entity made that rustling sound again. "Intentional breach or accident? Unclear. The old lures still function occasionally." Lures, my bracelet, it hadn't fallen off. It had been taken, placed deliberately to lead me here. "Find it," the tall entity commanded. "Unregistered humans contaminate the exchange unless..." It paused. "Is it suitable merchandise?" The guard checked something on the desk. "Possible. Young, reasonably healthy. Carries an item of previous exchange origin." They were talking about me. I pressed deeper into the wardrobe, trying not to breathe. "Secure it for evaluation," the tall entity decided. "The consortium may be interested." They left the room, continuing their conversation as the door closed behind them. I waited, counting to 100 before emerging from my hiding place. I had to escape now before they returned. The outer door was locked again, but there had to be another way out. I returned to the monitors, looking for any possible exit route. Most screens showed the clients now fully spread throughout the mall. The food court had been transformed into something like a bazaar with strange objects displayed on tables. The clothing stores held what looked like living creatures in the changing rooms, some disturbingly human-shaped. The electronics store had been converted into something resembling an auction house where impossible objects were being displayed. One monitor showed the parking garage mostly empty, but with a security door propped open where a delivery was taking place. If I could reach that door. I found a maintenance map on the wall showing service corridors. My storage room connected to a service elevator that led to the parking level. It was my only chance. I slipped out, checking the corridor. Empty for now. The elevator was just 30 feet away. I ran to it, jabbing the call button repeatedly. It lit up the car, beginning its descent from upper floors. As I waited, I heard voices approaching, the inhuman rustling, and the two smooth tones of the guard thing. They were coming back. The elevator doors opened. I jumped inside, hitting the button for P2, parking level 2. As the doors began to close, I saw them round the corner. The guard's too wide smile dropped. He shouted something, pointing at me. The taller entity moved with shocking speed, reaching the elevator just as the doors sealed shut. Long, pale fingers scraped against the metal as the car began to descend. The elevator moved agonizingly slowly. I watched the floor numbers change, willing it to move faster. From above, I could hear something in the shaft, scraping, climbing sounds. They were coming. The elevator reached P2 with a cheerful ding. I squeezed through the doors before they fully opened and ran through the parking garage. The exit signs pointed the way to the delivery area I'd seen on the monitor. I rounded a corner and saw it, a propped open door with night air visible beyond. Freedom. As I ran toward it, a figure stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. The guard thing with his too wide smile. "The bracelet, please," he said, extending a hand. "It doesn't belong to you. It never did." I backed away, clutching my wrist. It was my grandmother's. He shook his head almost sadly. "No, she acquired it the same way. These items cycle through your world. They always return for the exchange." From behind me came the sound of the elevator opening. More entities would be coming. "What are you?" I asked, stalling for time as I looked for an opening to run. "Facilitators, middlemen. The mall serves many purposes, many realities." His smile widened impossibly. "And now you've seen too much. You have two choices. Surrender the item and become merchandise yourself, or join us." "Join you?" "The night staff always needs new members. Your world, but not of it. It has benefits." I heard more footsteps approaching from multiple directions. No way out now. I made a decision. I removed the bracelet, extending it toward him. As he reached for it, I threw it one direction and ran the other, diving between parked cars. Chaos erupted behind me. The entities scrambled for the bracelet while I sprinted for the exit. I burst through the door into the cool night air of the parking lot, running full speed toward the street. I didn't stop running until I reached a busy all-night diner 6 blocks away. Only then did I look back. Nothing had followed me, at least nothing visible. I never returned to that mall. I read in the paper a week later about unexplained equipment failures in their security system and a rash of overnight vandalism. The management announced the mall would close permanently after the holiday season due to financial problems.